To have him on, the very first guest for the 2024 program here for our weekend edition of The Voice of Reason. He's with ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, as the Energy, Environment, and Agriculture Task Force Director. Excited to have on the program here Mr. Joe Trotter. Joe, how are you, my friend?
Great. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. Happy New Year to you. And there is a lot to talk about for sure, because not only is Congress heading back to D.C., here in the next week, talking about what they're doing and what their priorities are going to be. We have a budget coming up. We have the winter time coming up, which means we have some energy prices. We have a farm bill that keeps getting extended because we can't figure out how to get that one down. Like, this is going to be a heavy slate this year. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. There's so much going on in D.C., but that's kind of the beauty of our system here, having all 50 states be their own little laboratories of policy. So much happens in D.C. that gets so much attention, but what's going on in the states is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. Let's talk first about energy. I remember 2 years ago, I'm based out of Kansas here in our flagship, and we had an Arctic front that came down and caught us all by surprise, like the middle of February, where we saw negative 18-degree temperatures. And I will never forget that energy bill in my lifetime, because our natural gas went from $3 per cubic foot to $600 per cubic foot. And I had a $2,500 utility bill for my natural gas for that week or couple of days, because the energy companies were frantic in purchasing things. Now it looks like this year we could actually get another Arctic front coming down again. Are states prepared for this, or are we going to see energy prices skyrocket over the next few months because of our lack of preparedness for stuff like this?
Well, some states are prepared, and those are states in which there are different ways to generate electricity: natural gas, coal, nuclear, even wind and solar. The states where they have the ability to go ahead and essentially let the market decide what is the most efficient way to do it, residents in those states are going to have lower energy bills. So, when I'm looking at a house or somewhere to live, it's great to be able to turn on some electric heat in an emergency. It's great to be able to use natural gas to also be able to heat the home if necessary. It's the states that allow the market to decide and don't arbitrarily ban ways to heat your home or power electricity, where residents are going to go ahead and have cheaper electricity and more affordable heat. Then you have states, particularly like California and the upper Northeast, that go ahead and have these crazy mandates that say you must generate electricity this way. And when something like an Arctic front comes through, oh man, their bills are going to be high and their power is going to be unreliable.
Yeah, it is going to be scary. The latest UN climate change conference that we saw just a couple weeks ago or a month ago, whenever it was, early December, they were talking about, John Kerry literally flew out there and talked about needing to ban coal plants and ban coal energy at all, which, again, going back to that cold front that we saw a few years ago, Texas saw a lot of brown and blackouts because they refuse to fire up a lot of their coal plants right now. That's a concern as we get forced to say, like you mentioned, exactly what type of energy we're allowed to use. We're putting a strain on those. Everybody's buying an electric vehicle, and then they say to cut back on your electricity because there's going to be brownouts and blackouts, so I can't keep my home warm or be able to charge my car to go to work in the morning.
Absolutely. I mean, look, having a diversity of ways to go ahead and make sure the lights stay on is just a great idea. And that's from a straight up safety perspective. I mean, you have places like in New York right now where they're banning putting new natural gas pipelines into homes. Well, kind of the crazy thing there is these pipes that are supposed to go into homes, they call them natural gas pipelines, but ultimately any gas can go through. Hydrogen, if we ever get large-scale hydrogen production up and running, that could go ahead and be piped through. It's this poor planning and not thinking ahead that not only keeps energy unaffordable for large swaths of the country, it puts people in danger when these Arctic fronts come through.
Yeah. Or during the summertime when it's 120 degrees outside and we want our AC to not get shut off on us. We're talking with Joe Trotter. He's with the Energy, Environment, Agriculture Task Force for ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which you can find online at alec.org. Let's talk about gas prices for just a moment. Right now, gas prices are decent. They're reasonable. We're in an off season right now. We're not traveling quite as much, but at the time when all the experts were like, oh, gas prices are going to go up because OPEC is cutting their production, oil companies, not the Biden administration, but oil companies around the country say that they're going to start drilling more and actually supplementing that. And now we're back to about levels of oil production nationwide domestically as we were under the Trump administration. This is kind of a wacky system right now, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And actually, you can go ahead and credit President Trump's administration for this. Towards the end of the administration, they went ahead and made sure that the leasing permits were out there and ready to go before the Biden administration swooped in with its war on fossil fuels. So when you go ahead and do a lease for drilling oil or extracting natural gas, the company goes ahead and leases this and then begins exploration, does a few test wells, surveys the area. And it takes about 2 to 3 years before anything productive is being pumped out of the ground. So what you're seeing right now is a direct positive impact from the end of the Trump presidency on gas prices.
I like that. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. It does take that time. So I was curious on how they're able to do this after Joe Biden tried to shut down some of these drillings. They don't like it. In fact, they've been pushing this green energy policy for a long time on how they're allowing all of this drilling to happen. It's just the delayed effect, the delayed response coming from this one, which is fantastic. On that same front, on the statewide levels, I mean, again, coming from Kansas and the Mid-America region, we have Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, this entire region right now. A lot of our economic industry is the oil industry. And in fact, in the state of Kansas, the oil industry is our number 3 biggest energy or economic driver in the state because of this industry. Overall, do you think that states are doing well and still benefiting from what's going on right now?
States are doing well. And like I mentioned, it takes a few years before the impact on these decisions are felt. And down the road, in a couple of years, we're going to have problems due to the Biden administration's current policies. But it's not just energy and gasoline where things are doing well right now. So most people don't realize this, but the fertilizer that goes into pretty much all crop production in the United States is actually made with natural gas. So the agriculture industry is also doing pretty well. Now, of course, there are other sort of economic drivers. We've had a lot of inflation over the years, but everything seems to be evening out a bit. But that's where we're at right now. We'll see where we're at in a year or two.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You mentioned the fertilizers. I was not aware how much natural gas was involved in that, but I do know that we do buy a lot of fertilizer from China, and with some of the ongoing tension right now, that has driven some of those prices up on the agricultural side of things. Is that getting better, do you think, with those relations in trade and purchasing agricultural products from China, like fertilizer, to come over here?
Well, where we're seeing the benefit is in our own domestic production. There was actually a huge price hit at the beginning of the whole debacle between Ukraine and Russia, because about a third of the world's fertilizer actually came from sort of those border regions over there. But with this strong domestic production, we're seeing a rebound, and that's helping people when they go and see prices on the store shelves.
That's good news. We're talking with Joe Trotter, Energy, Environment, and Agriculture Task Force Director for ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which you can find online at alec.org. We got to take a break here in just about a minute, so I want to set up the next segment for us here. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the state priorities going into legislative sessions. Now that we're into January, these states are convening again on what their priorities may be. And there's a lot, especially in the ag industry, with the extension of the Farm Bill at the national level, trying to talk about how to reform that one, which I do want to touch on briefly when we come back, but then also how we can start working on, deregulating the ag industry. We saw the repealing of the Waters of the U.S. bill, at least in one of the appropriation bills that were passed from the House, and whether that's actually going to go all the way through will be really nice and actually allow farmers to do what they want to do. Plus, when it comes to trade internationally, the Ukraine and Russia issue, the Israeli issue, and some of those that may be impacting, of course, the rural communities across the nation. We'll do that with the state's legislators when we come back around the corner with ALEC. It's Joe Trotter. It's the voice of reason. So great to be back after the 2024 holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to you. Starting off with a bang. We got a lot to get to. Stay right here. Always wonderful. We're hanging out right now with Joe Trotter, Energy, Environment, and Agriculture Task Force Director for ALEC, which you can find online at alec.org, focusing on state legislative priorities as sessions get back into it for 2024, what is their agenda? What is their focus? And let's focus on that. Joe, obviously, let's talk about agriculture for just a moment. The extension of the Farm Bill, kind of interesting. The repealing of the Waters of the U.S. rule, at least in one of the appropriation bills at the federal level. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. But that would be nice, again. But what's the state right now, and what is the priority for many states to focus on when it comes to trying to produce energy, trying to produce agriculture, trying to actually keep the economy stable on the rural front?
Well, the beauty of it is state legislators more or less can see success in their economies by staying out of it and ensuring that the rest of the regulatory system stays out of it as well. The free market is a beautiful, beautiful thing where resources are allocated where it's profitable, and profitable means it's productive. So right now, the thing to look for in your state legislators is whether or not they're going ahead and letting people make decisions for themselves.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be really nice. Now, do you know of any more states that are focusing on trying to ban, let's say, for example, China or foreign nations from purchasing land? I know it's been a big topical discussion. Oklahoma, I believe, has done it. South Dakota has done it. Other states have talked about it. But it was an issue with foreign countries like China coming in and buying up agricultural land in the country.
It is, and states are definitely talking about it. And we're hearing the discussions, and within ALEC, we have a working group that is taking a look at this issue as a whole. But interestingly, the Biden administration is starting to throw states and just general people for a loop here. The Securities and Exchange Commission is looking at this new form of company called a natural asset company. And what it is it's a company that can go ahead and buy up or lease federal land. Now, this is federal land that is often used for grazing or leased for other agricultural purposes. But the idea behind these companies is they go ahead and retain the rights to the land, but not be allowed to do anything about it or on it. So the idea is to essentially park these federal and sometimes state, and in some instances even private, assets in these companies, which can then be bought up by foreign powers through shares on the stock exchange. So even if the states go ahead and ban this acquisition of productive agricultural land, the federal government is trying to do an end run around the states to make sure that foreign adversaries like China or Russia or pretty much anyone else that's kind of a bad actor in the world can go ahead and own a piece of America, where it can then prevent us and people from turning it into something productive.
Wow, they're just relentless. It's like we need to defend and protect the ability for foreign nations to come in and take control over us. Is this by any way partnered up with their whole 30 by 30 plan, trying to consume 30% of the lands as federal government property by the year 2030? I know Joe Biden's pushed that through the USDA as well. Is that part of this agenda?
It is. That is exactly what this is. And thank you for bringing this up. This is going to be my next point. 30 by 30 is dangerous. And the idea is basically in the next 30 years, go ahead and make sure that 30% of the land in the United States is under federal control for the purposes of, big air quotes here, protecting the environment. Now, what that means is basically letting these lands just be unproductive. It's a total mess, and they're trying to take private land, they're trying to take state land, and it's just this enormous expansion of federal power that, left unchecked, is going to just be an absolute boondoggle.
Yeah, what a mess. And I know right now we're already at like 28% of the land being consumed, so it's not a whole lot more, but this 30 by 30 plan is a very dangerous thing. It's all under the purpose of ESG and environmentalism. If the federal government owns it, then you can't screw it up. And that's kind of where we're at right now. It's Joe Trotter, Energy, Environment, and Agriculture Task Force Director for ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC.org. Joe, I appreciate all the information, my friend. Keep up the good fight. Hopefully we see a good legislative session this year across the nation. Got to get you back on the show and get another update again from you soon.